Good afternoon or good morning for those of you who are on the West Coast. I'm currently on the East Coast, so it's afternoon. I want to start off by thanking you all for taking the time to be here today to learn about the Department of Energy's Building Upgrade Prize. My name is Stephanie Sosa Coulter, and I am the Deputy Director for Residential Retrofits for Energy Equity, or R2E2 for short, at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, or ACEEE for short. So the Buildings Upgrade Prize is funded by the DOE Building Technologies Office and administered by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL. We actually have representatives from both DOE and NREL in attendance today who will be joining me during the Q&A section of the webinar. So from DOE, we have Cassie Grimes. If you can turn on your camera and just wave hello. And from NREL, we have Sarah Truitt. Thank you both so much for attending today's webinar, and I look forward to discussing the Buildings Upgrade Prize in more detail later on. So the Residential Retrofits for Energy Equity team, which is composed of ACEEE, Elevate, HR&A, and Emerald Cities Collaborative, is also collaborating with DOE and NREL on the Buildings Upgrade Prize, which is why we are running these learning sessions for the prize. R2E2 will also be offering trainings and technical support for the first phase of the prize. And I will talk a bit more about some of the upcoming sessions that the R2E2 team will be hosting beginning next week. And we're really excited about those. And just to take a step back and give you some background on the R2E2 program. It is a new nationwide initiative that will provide training to state, local, and tribal governments, as well as community-based organizations and other partners to jumpstart energy upgrades for affordable housing that will lower utility bills, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve residents' health, create good-paying local jobs, and help advance racial equity. So before I get into the details of this exciting prize, I have some housekeeping announcements. We are recording this webinar and we'll be making it available to all registrants within a few business days. To ask a question during the webinar, please put it in the Q&A section, which is if you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A button and you can submit your question there, and we will get to it during the Q&A segment towards the end of the webinar. You can upvote questions that you think are particularly good or important, and we will be sure to prioritize those questions. And also you can talk to one another and network via the chat button at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so today we will be covering different aspects of the Buildings Upgrade Prize. I will be doing an overview of the prize, discuss the prize goals, and different pathways and prizes that are being offered via Buildings Up. I will also talk about the Application Support Business Bonus Prize, which is a unique opportunity and ways you can get involved. After, we will bring on DOE and NREL reps for the Q&A. So please remember to ask those questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen as we go through different sections of the webinar. So the Buildings Upgrade Prize, or Buildings Up for short, is designed to rapidly scale energy efficiency and efficient electrification upgrades to existing buildings all across the country. This is not a prize to upgrade a single building, but rather to develop an initiative that will complete many building upgrades in your building upgrade zones. And I'll explain what that means later on. The prize is envisioned to consist of 4 phases over approximately 5 years. And of course, this is subject to availability of funds. This webinar, though, will only focus on the concept phase, which is phase 1 of the prize. And phase 1 will award over $22 million in cash prizes and technical assistance opportunities across winning teams. Applications for phase 1 opened on February 18th of this year and will close on July 18th, 2023. DOE is seeking 20 to 60 winning teams to join the Buildings Upgrade Prize. DOE is calling this a co-opetition, as you can see on the slide here, rather than a competition, because they aren't looking to crown a single winning team at the end of this. Instead, they hope to see as many teams as possible move through the prize phases successfully. And to address this challenge, DOE really wants all hands on deck, working together and sharing your best ideas with one another to move farther, faster. And an application support bonus prize is now open to support new and under-resourced teams to develop and submit a phase 1 concept application. And I'll cover the app support prize in more detail later on in the webinar. So as I mentioned, Buildings Up is envisioned to consist of 4 phases over about 5 years, contingent on funding and approvals. And I will only cover phase 1 today, which has been approved and funded. So what's the difference between a grant and a prize? Grants have all of these steps, and you can see them listed on the left side of the presentation. And you often have to negotiate over milestones. And if you change something, it must be reviewed and approved. And it can be a pretty long process. But in contrast, the prize structure rewards work that has already been completed. You don't have to jump through the hoops required of the grant process, but rather you just need to achieve the predefined goals of the prize and to complete the submission package. It's quicker, it doesn't have any strings attached, and also you get to decide how you use your prize winnings. And before I get into the weeds of the prize, I kind of want to set the stage and talk a bit about why energy efficiency and efficient electrification is so important. For those who are less familiar with the energy sector, it is essentially divided into 2 parts. There's the supply side and the demand side. The supply side is where our energy is generated, and this may be through coal-fired power plants, natural gas running directly to buildings, nuclear power, or increasingly from electric energy generated by renewables. Renewable energy generated by wind turbines and solar arrays is definitely becoming a larger share of our energy supply every day, and that's really great. But this prize isn't focused on the supply side. Buildings Up is focused on the demand side, or how our buildings are using energy. And as the grid becomes cleaner, we need to prepare buildings to be able to make use of that clean electricity from renewable sources. And this means 2 things. 1, reducing the total energy a building needs through energy efficiency measures, such as installing attic insulation and doing air sealing. Then upgrading buildings to be able to use that clean electricity by transitioning them to efficient electric equipment, such as electric heat pumps and heat pump water heaters and efficient electric appliances. So Buildings Up aims to address the persistent administrative, financial, social, and other barriers to energy efficiency and reducing on-site emissions from existing buildings. And We have the technologies to do it, such as heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, insulation, and air sealing strategies. And we have the funds, thanks to the recent legislation, including the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. Plus, there are more local rebates and tax credits from municipal governments and utilities. Unfortunately, we're only seeing energy upgrades in about 1 to 2% of the nation's 125 million existing buildings each year. And this slow progression will not meet the administration's climate and Justice 40 goals. So DOE is looking for innovations to address these barriers to improving our buildings across the nation. Buildings Up is a capacity building prize that will support teams to develop solutions that accelerate building upgrades, are scalable and replicable, are built to last beyond the period of the prize. The prize is structured to provide teams with support to ramp up their solutions, but teams should be developing solutions from the start that can continue even after the prize is finished. And Buildings Up also seeks to benefit underserved communities by ensuring that at least 40% of the prize benefits accrue to equitable eligible buildings, their occupants, and the surrounding community. And I will define what equity eligible buildings are later on as well. So teams may be made up of a combination of different organization types, and that includes community-based organizations, non-federal government and tribal entities, nonprofits, for-profits, utilities, and other organizations. So it's pretty open, and the teams can look in many different ways. Participating entities must be incorporated in the United States, and teams must enter phase 1 to be eligible to participate in the future phases that I mentioned earlier. You can attend an informational webinar, or you can see the official rules for details on what's required and recommended for team members. So Buildings Up applicants can choose one of 2 pathways and prizes. Excuse me. The first is the Equity-Centered Innovation Pathway, which will award $400,000 in cash prizes for each winning team. For this pathway, teams will commit at least 80% of their building upgrade initiative implementation on equity-eligible buildings, which again, I'll explain in greater detail on the next slide. And then there's the Open Innovation Pathway, which will award $200,000 in cash prizes for each winning team. And for this pathway, applicants are encouraged to focus on equity eligible buildings, but it's not a requirement. For both pathways, teams will submit a concept plan for an initiative that can achieve scalability and replicability of building upgrades in a specified geographic area or building type. So I just want to reiterate that one building projects do not qualify for the Buildings Upgrade Prize because DOE is really focusing on scaling building upgrades. Teams will receive technical assistance to build out concept submissions into implementation plans. This prize funding won't pay for many building upgrades on its own, but it can pay for capacity building for dedicated staff in your organizations and communities to focus on developing innovative upgrade initiatives that leverage other sources of funding from federal and local sources. It can also pay for community engagement efforts to understand and authentically respond to the needs of building occupants we hope to reach with these upgrades. Subsequent phases are envisioned to offer similar prizes to help teams pilot and implement their building upgrade initiatives, and teams selected during phase 1 will be invited to participate in those future phases. So now moving on to equity eligible buildings. For the purpose of this prize, the following building types are considered equity eligible buildings and are defined in 4 categories. And these 4 categories will meet the requirements of the equity-centered innovation pathway. So the first one is by geographic location, buildings located within DOE designated Justice 40 census tracts, tribal lands, whether they're federally or non-federally recognized, and US territories are equity eligible. And then we have affordable housing and housing occupied by low-income residents, including subsidized affordable housing, naturally occurring affordable rental housing, and homes occupied by low-income households. Then we also have underserved commercial, nonprofit, and public buildings, including buildings used by small disadvantaged businesses, those that serve disadvantaged communities, Title I schools, and buildings used by nonprofit organizations that provide localized community services, buildings that provide critical community services, disaster or resilience hubs, or otherwise, or buildings otherwise defined as equity eligible buildings through the community or local input. And then the 4th option, and this one is really unique, is the team defined. We recognize that there may be specific local conditions or considerations that could make buildings equity eligible. And that includes areas with job loss due to energy transitions, weather emergencies, linguistic isolation, etc. So applicants can create a local definition of equity eligible buildings and submit for consideration by the prize team. And there's additional information on the HeroX website, and I will provide that link later on in this slide. And it's also included in section 3.5 of the official rules, which again, you can find on HeroX. So teams should identify their building upgrade zone, which is the place they intend to complete the upgrades. The building upgrade zone includes a geographic boundary, which can be many different things, and I'll list some examples out. It can be an entire community. It can be neighborhoods within a community. It could be a utility service area or a portfolio of geographically dispersed buildings, in which case the boundary might be an entire state or an entire region where buildings are located, or even the entire country if the portfolio is located throughout the United States. So again, as I mentioned, it's pretty open and it's based on what buildings your team is planning on addressing. And second, specific building types you intend to address within the boundary you identified, such as single-family homes utilizing fuel, oil, or propane, multifamily buildings utilizing inefficient electric or gas heating and or cooling, small commercial buildings with rooftop units. And you may also be trying to address all buildings in the boundary. And please note that strong concept plans will include many buildings in the building upgrade zone rather than a single building retrofit. And concept plans should outline upgrade initiatives that will impact many buildings because, again, this is really about creating scale. So here are some examples of initiative types that also show building upgrade zones. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can look through the slide and see the different examples that DOE provided. But one is a rural electric cooperative partnering with a local CBO and the county to help LMI single-family home residents transition from propane heat to efficient electric heat pumps. Here, the building's upgrade zone would be LMI single-family homes currently using propane within an entire utility service area. Another example is a CBO working in a mid-sized town and collaborating with its local government to bring heat pumps to affordable housing buildings throughout the community. And then to kind of like broaden up the zone, I wanted to highlight an example of a national residential property owner, which is teaming up with multiple local governments and utilities in areas across the country where they own and manage properties. And they're submitting a plan to electrify in those markets. And as I mentioned, DOE is being very open about the teams and their intended upgrade zone, because at the end of the day, the goal is to scale up building upgrades across the nation, and that can be done in so many different ways, and teams can target so many different communities, again, in innovative and unique ways. And Buildings Up is designed to support innovations addressing non-technical barriers to scaling and replicating these kinds of programs. Buildings Up is also seeking innovation and overcoming challenges such as lack of contractor and occupant familiarity with technologies, high upfront costs for upgrades, insufficient workforce to scale upgrades, lack of reach of funding and incentive programs, and inconsistent quality of upgrades. Concept plans for building upgrade initiatives submitted for phase 1 should include the minimum technologies and strategies of efficient electric heating and cooling equipment, which includes heat pumps and/or heat pump water heaters, and weatherization and envelope improvements. So this doesn't mean that all upgraded buildings must receive weatherization or envelope improvements, but it must be available and part of the initiative offerings if needed to maintain or reduce energy costs or maintain comfort in the building receiving equipment upgrades. So Buildings Up is open to initiatives focusing on residential and/or commercial buildings, including those listed here. And if you have a question about a building type, you can let us know in the chat. So teams can receive support and participate in technical assistance in any or all of the areas shown here. So that it also includes power connectors who may host topic-specific workshops or webinars for all of the teams. Each winning team will have a regional navigator who will serve as the team's primary point of contact, meeting regularly with the team and helping them identify the right TA at the right time. And as I mentioned, DOE is considering this a co-op petition. And as a co-op petition, DOE certainly hopes that the teams themselves will be a great resource to one another, sharing ideas, resources, and best practices to help everyone go farther and really making their concepts into true initiatives. So now moving on to the application support prize. It is meant to encourage applicants who might otherwise not have the staff capacity, time, or expertise to submit a full phase 1 submission. And the primary intended competitors for the application support prize are first-time applicants for DOE Building Technologies Office funding, community-based organizations representing or serving areas with equity eligible buildings. Qualifying teams can apply for one of 50 prizes of $5,000 and 10 hours of technical assistance with the R2E2 team member Elevate to help them complete a phase 1 submission. The application support prize is now open and will be awarded on a rolling basis until funds are expended. And I'm happy to announce that DOE has awarded 12 diverse groups for the first tranche of the application support prize. And these groups include CBOs, nonprofits, and local governments. And if you're interested, I just want to let you know that the next application is due on March 15th, which is pretty close. It's coming up, but if you miss that deadline, you can submit an application for support funding by April 14th, 2023. And you can see the due dates listed on this slide here. Again, here's a timeline of phase 1, which includes submitting for the phase 1 concept prize and submitting an application for the application support prize. And there are some key dates highlighted in this slide. If you don't have to write these down, you can always go to the HeroX website to keep track of upcoming deadlines or if any changes are made. And before I wrap up, I just want to summarize the different components of phase 1. There's the phase 1 concept, which includes 2 pathways. The equity-centered innovation pathway, which will award $400,000 per winning team, and the open innovation pathway, which will award $200,000 per winning team. Both pathways will have access to regional navigators and technical assistance, and there will be a total of 20 to 60 awards across both pathways, and you can see that on this slide. And also as part of phase 1, we also have the phase 1 application support prize, which will fund up to 50 teams a prize of $5,000 cash and an additional 10 hours of technical assistance to help new and under-resourced applicants to develop phase 1 concept submissions, which are due in July. So I mentioned earlier that the R2E2 team is collaborating with the DOE Buildings Upgrade Prize to provide technical assistance to prize applicants and winners. And we are going to be hosting various training webinars, all of which are being held by talented experts in the field and experts who are participating in the R2E2 team. So we will be covering topics such as engaging stakeholders, intros to comprehensive retrofits and decarbonization, and community-driven planning. We'll talk about accessing funding and programs, affordable housing, equity, and workforce and economic inclusion. And these webinars are not mandatory for applicants, but are strongly encouraged, as these will provide you with the knowledge and tools you need to submit a strong concept plan. And you can see the different dates here. At the bottom, we have the ACEEE link website where you can get more information about each of these webinars and also have access to the registration. You can also find information about these webinars on the HeroX website. So if you are interested in applying for the DOE Buildings Upgrade Prize, you are welcome to follow the prize on herox.com/buildingsup. You can register for webinars and trainings, which I mentioned. You can create an account, apply for the application support prize if you are eligible, and submit a phase 1 concept application on or before July 18th by 5 p.m. Eastern. And that does it for my portion of the webinar. So we will transition over to the Q&A portion. And please do not forget to add your questions using the Q&A feature below. So let's welcome back Cassie Grimes from DOE and Sarah Truitt from NREL to help answer your questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So is my screen not seen?
Yeah, I don't see your screen anymore.
Okay, perfect. So I have some questions here from the audience that I want to ask you. And the first one is there a way to find teammates?
So for this question, I want to pass it over to Sarah because I think she has more up-to-date information on the teaming. Oh, we can't hear you, Sarah.
You're on mute.
It still can't hear you. It looks like you're on mute.
So we can go to another question while Sarah figures that out. So who is a good candidate for Buildings Up and who is eligible?
Yeah, so I recommend, of course, checking the prize rules to make sure that your team meets the eligibility requirements, but I will say the eligibility for this prize is pretty broad. It's essentially any organization or entity that is non-federal organization or entity that's in the United States. So that's really the primary eligibility requirements. You can be a nonprofit, you can be a for-profit, you can be a local government, you can be a tribe, you can be a community-based organization. Of different options.
So Sarah, did you want to add to that?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I apologize. Every time I try to do something else on my computer, I'm getting kind of glitched out. So when I'm not trying to speak, I will drop the link into the chat about where to find teammates, but it is on our HeroX site. There's an area where you can connect with people. We are also going to be setting up a teaming event. And so signing up for the HeroX competition site is where you can find all of the information about how to get connected and how to register for that event when it is scheduled. It is not yet scheduled, but there's an updates tab where you will find out information about that event when it is scheduled. And I will stick a link in that chat while others are answering questions.
Yeah, and we also have another question about who qualifies. And so we have someone here who has asked if trade associations representing manufacturers can participate on a team as long as they're a nonprofit.
Yes, and you can also be a for-profit and participate on a team. But yes, nonprofits, trade associations, all are eligible.
And so that means that houses of worship are also eligible. And would houses of worship be considered equity eligible buildings?
So a house of worship might be considered equity eligible. We have a definition in the prize rules document in section 3.5, I believe, that provides that full definition. And so there are certain criteria that a house of worship would need to meet in order to be considered equity eligible. But I recommend checking there. I think some of that criteria involves providing community services, serving as a resilience hub, that sort of thing. But definitely double check.
And do apps, I'm just trying to read the question here. So do the application support applications need to be submitted by an NGO or a collaborative or with several community organizations?
To apply for the application support prize, you don't need to have your team in place already. And the team can change if you do already have a team in place when you apply. So you're welcome to apply as a team or as an individual organization.
And then we have another really good question here, which I think we can all answer. Are the R2E2 program and the buildings upgrade prize the same? So I'll start off by saying that they are not the same. The R2E2 program is a collaborative of ACEEE, Elevate, Emerald Cities Collaborative, and HR&A, and we have a mission to provide technical assistance and capacity building opportunities to groups across the nation that are have a plan to scale up building retrofits across the country. And it lines up really well with the buildings upgrade prize, and that's why we're collaborating, but they are two separate things. Cassie and Sarah, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, great. So there are more than 56 million homes in the US that were built before national energy efficiency standards. These are about 43 to 78 years old. They need to be repaired as well as upgraded. How will we combine these goals?
Yeah, so we hear you on that. For this prize, right now there's a minimum technology requirement, and so that includes weatherization and insulation envelope improvements, as well as efficient electric heating and cooling equipment. And so as long as the proposed initiative includes the minimum technologies, it's eligible. We realize that especially this prize is focused on existing buildings, and there are many buildings that are going to require some additional repairs, health and safety upgrades. And so that's absolutely eligible to be part of your proposed initiative, as long as you're meeting the minimum equipment upgrades as well.
And are small businesses eligible?
Yes.
And can potential applicants be part of more than one team?
Yes. There's no limit to how many teams you can be a part of or applications you can submit.
We have a good question here about the technical support. Can an individual or a small business team partner submit the application for the concept phase, one, technical support, while they are still forming the team and identifying CBOs and other team members, because they said the TA support phase was targeted to CBOs?
Yes, you can change your teammates as you go. You can bring on new teammates. There's no requirement to have your team in place, and teams can change throughout the process.
We also have a question asking for some clarification about what the prize money would fund, and what funds would need to be identified from other sources.
Sure. So the prize funding, there are no strings attached to that. So it's the prize funding that teams will receive. It's for the work that they've already done, which was submitting the application. And so there's no requirement for what you can use the 200K or the 400K for. The way that we see this prize working most efficiently, because 200K and 400K is not likely to upgrade a lot of buildings. We see that very well be used for capacity building, for hiring staff to work at your organizations, to have dedicated time to work on this initiative and building it out. So that's one way that you can use it. You can also use it for community engagement and paying community members to participate in stakeholder engagement sessions, for conducting outreach and marketing of your initiatives. But really there's no limit there. And Stephanie, I think I might have missed, there was another question on that. If you don't mind.
What funds would need to be identified from other sources?
Right, okay, thank you. And there's no need to, it's not a requirement to identify other funds. That's part of the support that we hope to be able to provide during the prize, is help with identifying other sources of funding. It's not a requirement to have that already in place. And like I said, there's no attachment to these funds, so there's no cost matching. I can't remember the technical term that we use, but cost share, that's it. There's no cost share with this program.
And are prizes rolling as applications come in, or only allocated after the final application deadline?
Yeah, so for the application support prize, that has a rolling deadline. We have 3 deadlines. The first was February 15th. That one already passed, and we already announced the first round of winners. And then we have 2 additional rounds coming up. The next round will close March 15th, and then the final round will close April 14th. So there's so it's on a rolling basis for application support prize, but then for the full phase 1 concept prize, that will have 1 deadline. The deadline for that is July 18th. And that won't be evaluated on a rolling basis. That will just be 1 deadline, and then all winners will be announced after that.
All right, so there's another question here. I know that this is focused on phase 1, but just for our records and understanding, has the phase 2 prize amount phase 2 prize amount been announced?
It has not been announced yet, but I can say that we anticipate there to be future phases of this prize, and we anticipate that the funding levels will be similar to phase 1.
And will only phase 1 awardees be allowed to go after the future phases of this program?
Yes, that right now is the plan for this. We are planning that the team selected in phase 1 will be invited to continue participating in the future phases.
And then I have another question here that's related to R2E2, or residential retrofits for energy equity. So non-residential buildings are allowed, even though connected to R2E2, which has residential in the name. I saw schools listed as an example. Yes, so as I mentioned before, the R2E2 initiative is separate of the DOE Buildings Upgrade Prize. We are providing technical assistance. We are collaborating with DOE and NREL on the Buildings Upgrade Prize. And so schools are able to qualify as for the Buildings Upgrade Prize, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we won't be providing technical assistance to projects that have schools listed. Have to be installation and electric equipment, or one or the other? I'm assuming it's saying, do projects have to be installation and electric equipment, or one or the other?
Yes, we'd like to see both in there. They're both required.
Is there a definition for low-income households that would qualify as equity eligible buildings? Some rebate programs for heat pumps in Oregon use 80% area median income, and others use 200% federal poverty level. And I'm sure that it also applies across states as well.
Yeah, so the section 3.5 of the prize rules provides more details around the qualifications for equity eligible buildings. And so we have, I believe we included a fairly broad definition for affordable housing. And there's also a component to that definition. In part 4, we kind of frame this definition out in 4 different parts, covering the White House definition of disadvantaged communities and Justice 40 definition, as well as commercial buildings, residential. And then we also have an option for applicants to provide us with a definition that they use locally to define equity eligible buildings. So if the definition that you use is not directly featured in that list of definitions, you're still welcome to propose that and describe to us what a building that's equity eligible.
And then there's another question about what buildings qualify. Are nonprofit theaters eligible?
Yes, so any residential or commercial building is eligible for the prize. And then there's just more specific requirements for equity eligible buildings.
And is it possible to be a for-profit and partner with a local government and apply for funding?
Yes, absolutely. Both are eligible, and as a team, eligible.
Is there a goal of number of homes this funding seeks to reach overall?
So we don't have necessarily a goal overall, but we are looking to that these initiatives will be able to scale, and that the initiatives will be replicable across either like a geographic region or climate zone, or across a building type. So we are looking for scalable solutions to building upgrades. So we're hoping that the applicants will propose to us, what sort of scaling and replicability is feasible, and kind of building from there.
And do you limit the number of prizes by regions? Can more than one team from the city submit or have a chance to succeed?
Yes. So yeah, more than one team from a city can submit. There's no limit to how many applications you can be a part of or how many applications you can submit.
And
as long as they're all unique initiatives that are being proposed.
And can you talk a bit more about the requirements, like what needs to be accomplished? Someone listed weatherization, installation. Can you add to that as well?
Sure. So right now, the minimum required technologies are weatherization, envelope improvements. So that can include insulation, air sealing, window improvements, as well as efficient electric heating and cooling equipment. So that's heat pumps or heat pump water heaters. And those are the minimum upgrades. There's a lot of additional strategies that can be included, such as electric vehicle chargers, geothermal heating and cooling, on-site community solar, electric panel upgrades. Those are all eligible add-ons, and there's there are more examples listed in the prize rules.
And then there's another question about having to submit reports. Is there a requirement for submitting periodic reports? And I'm assuming that this is after applicants have received funding.
Yeah, there's no reporting requirements for this prize. Since we're anticipating some future phases, there will be opportunities to submit applications for later phases. But other than that, there are no other reporting requirements or reporting on the funding.
Is the intent technical or procedural innovation which can be replicated elsewhere, even without the prize money?
I would say it's It can be either, but I would say I would probably need more details about that question to answer it well, but I think essentially we are looking for not necessarily R&D of new technologies, but we're seeking initiatives that are looking to scale and replicate upgrades using existing technologies that are available or technologies that are ready to go to market and be scaled.
And does the lead organization manage for the team members?
The lead organization does not have to stay the same. That can also change. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I'm just looking here to see if there are any questions that we haven't answered. It seems like we've gone through all of them. There's one question here, and I think that this is for ACEEE, who's hosting this webinar. Will there be a list of attendees for connection purposes? I know that ACEEE does not share emails, but I'm not quite sure if we will be sending out a list of attendees. Nick, is that something that you can help me answer?
I'd have to check with the team here. I know we definitely do not share email addresses, but I can check.
Okay, and I'll pass this question on to DOE and NREL. I'm wondering if there's any way that you encourage those who are participating in this webinar now to connect with each other. Is there an option to do that via the HeroX website or any other form?
Yep. So can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I put a link to our FAQ document, and there are a few FAQs, rows 5, 6, and 7, in which you can follow instructions on how to sign up for HeroX, and then how to see other teams that have signed up and how to connect.
And we did get one more question. Will the team leader have some responsibility for how other team members perform?
So we aren't going to have any control or oversight over that. So I think it's up to the team and how the team wants to operate. But we won't intervene.
And I'm not seeing any other questions, but I'm just wondering, Cassie and Sarah, if there's anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up today.
I would say if you're interested in the application support prize, the next round deadline is coming up. It's March 15th. So try and get your applications in. We only have a total of 50 prizes available and 12 were awarded. So we have 38 left. So I recommend not waiting till the last round in April. I recommend trying to get your application in early.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, well, thank you so much for attending today's session on the DOE Buildings Upgrade Prize. I hope that this webinar got you excited about the opportunity and provided you with some background and information you need in order to build out your teams and apply for the Buildings Upgrade Prize. Again, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.